We are very possibly living in the era of the greatest Supreme Court bench in American history. That has been true, that we are very possibly in that era, since last year's decision in Dobbs, which overruled the single worst decision in American history, Roe v. Wade. But the claim has now gotten some strong backup since yesterday, the Supreme Court of the United States struck down affirmative action, racial discrimination in college admissions. And as a cherry on top, the exact losing party was the liberal lunatics over at Harvard. That was just a little L for Harvard was just right on top of this otherwise totally beautiful case. Already totally beautiful case. The case was Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. And the court ruled 6-3 that race-based admissions programs at Harvard and UNC violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Chief Justice Roberts joined the conservatives and wrote for the court, quote, "Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it." I know that conservatives are supposed to whine and complain and constantly lament the end of the world. But this Supreme Court, thanks to 3 judges appointed by one president who was improbably elected after all the smart set political geniuses said hope was lost, he didn't have a chance, 99% chance the Democrat was going to win. Well, this Supreme Court that exists only as a result of all those things happening has officially and significantly changed the course of American history for the better. Just when conservatives were inclined to give up hope, we remember an important lesson heading into 4th of July weekend. A verse of a very important song that very often gets left out of the singing. "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave." I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. It's a good day, folks. It's good. We got to celebrate the wins when we get them. And to celebrate, we'll do something a little special and fun at the end of something that I usually only reserve for the crème de la crème, the inner circle, the beurre de la beurre, the real, the real members. We're going to do it at the end of the show. It's Fake Headline Friday. We'll get to that in just a bit. First, though, this case, Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. What is this group? This is a group that said that they were unfairly discriminated against in the admissions processes at Harvard and UNC. And the group pointed to the high test scores of Asian students and white applicants who were rejected. If the case were only brought by white students, it would have gone nowhere, because we live at a time, well, I guess this has just changed. We live at a time where you had widespread de jure racial discrimination against white people, and we still live in a time where the only group that you were allowed to and encouraged socially to attack and insult and malign and mock is white people. So if it had only been white students who were affected here, I don't think the case really would have gone very far. But the libs made a big mistake. They got a little sloppy, and they discriminated against Asians too. And Asians can claim the mantle of discriminated against, oppressed minority. And so this exposed some of the incoherence of the affirmative action regime. After the civil rights movement, the black civil rights movement in the 1960s, a lot of other groups on the left realized that they could try to mimic the civil rights movement of black people who have a unique role in American history because of the existence of slavery and the long experience of black people in America. They realized they could kind of mimic that and try to get their own ends, to the point that today you even have people who have various sexual desires and identities and all this kind of nonsense claiming to be the new civil rights movement. And this didn't really work when one of the arguments for affirmative action was that you need to protect these poor aggrieved racial minorities, and then you've got a poor aggrieved racial minority that says, wait, you're discriminating against us too, because we're Asians and we work very hard and we have high IQs and we're doing well on these tests, but we're not being allowed in, while people from other racial groups who have lower test scores are being allowed in our place because of racial favoritism in the schools. Okay, so you get it. This case overrules a previous case, Grutter v. Bollinger. This was a case that was decided 23 years ago, I think it was. I think it was a 2003 case. And at the time that Grutter was decided, which upheld affirmative action in college admissions, Sandra Day O'Connor, the nominally conservative Republican appointed justice who often sided with the libs, she said, we expect that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary. So already built in to the upholding of affirmative action was this idea that it's going to be time limited. And where do you get that principle from in the Constitution? You don't. And it was just the Supreme Court with the libs and the squish conservatives shooting from the hip. But now we're almost exactly 25 years later, and the court says, okay, time's up. It wasn't just Sandra Day O'Connor, who, though a squish, was still appointed by a Republican, by Ronald Reagan, but it was even the libs. It was even the liberal icons. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, at the time of Grutter v. Bollinger, upholding affirmative action, she still said that it can't be used forever, but it's useful for the time being to give us the racial outcomes that we want in society. Justice Thomas, at the time, made a really important point that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but it shows you why these schools are so insistent on upholding affirmative action. They were insistent on it not just because they're liberal ideologues and they hate white people and they want to help other racial groups get an unfair advantage over white people or whatever. It's also because these schools want to maintain their prestige, and they recognize that as racial diversity and inclusion and equity and whatever, all the rest of these ideologies become important in American life, that in order to continue to train the elite, the people who inevitably will become part of the elite, so long as this ideology predominates, they need to bring in more people of these racial groups that are not doing as well on the tests, and if test scores are the only thing that matter, are not going to be admitted to the college in very high numbers. So they're trying to maintain their prestige and their hold on American public life. Thomas went even further, Clarence Thomas, in the Grutter case, and he said that the schools have to pick high standards or diversity. That's that. If they're going to exalt high standards, then they need to stop playing favorites with the races. If they're going to exalt racial diversity or whatever, sexual diversity or all the other kinds of diversity for diversity's sake, then they need to stop pretending that they're valuing high standards. It's one or the other. They're mutually opposed here, because even if you say, well, obviously there are plenty of black people who do very well on tests and who will do very well in these schools. I mean, Justice Thomas would be a great example of this. It's about the principle that you're enshrining. Is college admissions primarily about high standards, or is it primarily about diversity and ideology? So today, the Supreme Court says affirmative action gone in college admissions. And don't forget, the Supreme Court reads the polls, Supreme Court reads the newspapers, and a majority of Americans, 62%, overwhelmingly, not just Republicans, not just white people, but a wide smattering of American people, oppose race-based college admissions because they all know it seems really, really unfair. So now we've got the opinion, we got the dissent, we've got two dueling opinions in the case, one opinion, one dissent, from the two black members of the Supreme Court, offering very different visions of race and affirmative action and the Constitution, which we'll get to in 1 second. First, though, before I talk to you about that, I need to talk to you about talking to your friends and your family, which is why you got to check out Pure Talk. Right now, head on over to puretalk.com/Knowles. I am a very discerning partner, okay? In my love life, in my social life, in my professional life. I'm discerning about the partners that I choose, and a company that I'm proud to stand behind, because that company is proud to stand behind us and our country and offers a great service, is Pure Talk. Veteran-owned with a 100% American workforce. They share our beliefs. That is why Pure Talk is the official cell phone wireless partner of the DailyWire. But that's not the only reason. Pure Talk also happens to be the most dependable 5G network in the U.S. They're a top-tier provider at a fraction of the cost of those other woke companies that don't care about you or your beliefs. Mix and match your plans to fit every person in your family. Choose from talk, text, and 5G data for just $20 a month, all the way up to unlimited data with a mobile hotspot for $55 a month. You vote with how you spend your money, so stop supporting woke wireless companies that do not support you. Instead, go to puretalk.com/Knowles. You'll get great coverage and save while you're doing it. puretalk.com/Knowles. Save an additional 50% off your first month because they value you. puretalk.com/Knowles. Pure Talk, wireless for Americans, by Americans. The libs love Justice Ketanji Jackson. She's the new one. She's the Biden appointee. And Ketanji Jackson, she's feisty. They like her because she's a woman. They like her because she's black. They like her for all these kind of more superficial, skin-deep reasons, sexual reasons. And they like her because she's extremely radical. She didn't know what a woman was. She couldn't define a woman at her confirmation hearings. So I didn't have very high hopes for her dissent in this case. And my low expectations were proven correct. Here's what she wrote. And this is the portion of Ketanji Jackson's dissent that all the libs are sharing around. They say, quote, "With let them eat cake obliviousness, today the majority pulls the ripcord and announces color blindness for all by legal fiat. But deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. And having so detached itself from this country's actual past and present experiences, the court has now been lured into interfering with the crucial work that UNC and other institutions of higher learning are doing to solve America's real-world problems. No one benefits from ignorance. Although formal race-linked legal barriers are gone, race still matters to the lived experiences. I mean, it's just a blah, 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 lived experience. It's basically, my friend Spencer Clavin pointed this out. He said, going in here, the students bringing the case and the group bringing the case on behalf of the students saying, hey, we don't want to be discriminated against just because we're Asian or white. They had the law on their side, they had philosophy on their side, they had morality on their side, they had the opinion of the conservative judges on their side, they had the opinion of very prominent liberal judges on their side. They had a pretty good case. And on the pro-race discrimination side of this case, they had diversity is our strength, the lived experiences of the racial oppression, and it's just that was not a legally persuasive view. And it hasn't persuaded the majority of the American people. The funniest part of Justice Jackson's very silly dissent is that first line of this section. Let them eat cake obliviousness. Because what that term does is reveals Justice Jackson's obliviousness. We know she's oblivious. She doesn't know what a woman is. But she's also oblivious to history because that phrase, let them eat cake, is a phrase attributed to Marie Antoinette. When Marie Antoinette supposedly was told that the peasants didn't have bread to eat, she said, let them eat cake, let them eat brioche. But it's a total fabrication. It was made up. The line actually predates Marie Antoinette. No great princess said it. It's just fake. It's just total fake news. And the libs fall into their fake news all the time. And they are oblivious to history and biology and philosophy and the law, apparently. And so it's over. What does Justice Thomas say in response to this? He answers Jackson. He says, accordingly, Justice Jackson's race-infused worldview falls flat at each step. Individuals are the sum of their unique experiences, challenges, and accomplishments. What matters is not the barriers they face, but how they choose to confront them. And their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives. A contrary, myopic worldview based on individual skin color to the total exclusion of their personal choices is nothing short of racial determinism. So true. Two different visions of race. One conservative from Justice Thomas, one liberal from Justice Jackson. Thomas is a Catholic. You can just tell this in his writing, in the way he speaks. Justice Thomas has the Christian view here, specifically a very Catholic view of the world. Justice Jackson, again, her religion is just racial grievance and liberalism and whining and pride. Thomas's hard work, humility, gratitude. Jackson's envy, resentment, pride, anger, wrath. All the stuff we associate with the libs. And as has happened now a couple times from the Supreme Court recently, and what happens rarely in our political life, the good side won. Really, really great stuff. Speaking of freedom, a big debate has broken out over whether Elon Musk should ban the word cis, C-I-S, from Twitter. And it's still raging. I mentioned this on the show a few days ago, but it's still raging. And Brad Palumbo, my debate partner from the University of Pittsburgh, and Brad pinch hit after the transgender identifying professor that I was supposed to debate on issues of gender and sex dropped out at the last minute because he felt that he couldn't do the debate. So Brad comes in, and Brad is a self-described libertarian. And he says, Elon Musk is the worst free speech hero ever. And that's because you should be able to say anything on Twitter. And if you don't, this is absolutely terrible. And of course, Brad is wrong here. And I wrote a book about how what Elon is doing is fabulous. The book is called Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds, number one national bestseller. Thank you very much. This is one of the most encouraging things that Elon has done because it shows a sophistication, not just a sophomoric, very elementary vision of politics that is based on modern, incoherent ideologies that have never been put into practice effectively anywhere in the world throughout all of human history. But he's recognizing that there's nuance here. We support free speech, but when we support free speech, we're supporting a tradition, not something in the abstract floating in outer space, but a real tradition with exclusions like threats, like obscenity, like fighting words, like fraud, like all of these sorts of things. And Elon is a great figure in technology and business, but a lot of guys, when they dip their toes from their areas of expertise into politics, they sometimes demonstrate a great deal of ignorance. Elon here, I think, is demonstrating a lot of sophistication, and you see it actually in the case of the affirmative action decision. The whole thing is about standards, and the affirmative action case asks, what kind of standards are we going to have in this country? And so far, what the judges are saying now is we're going to have something closer to a meritocracy. And before that, on affirmative action, you were going to have something closer to a racial hierarchy with Black people and Native Americans, and I don't know, at the top of it, and then maybe Hispanics, they go a little bit lower, and then Asians and white people at the bottom. And if you're a member of a favored race, you get special treatment, and if you're a member of a disfavored race, you're the scum of the earth, and you're going to be discriminated against. That was the view that predominated for the last many decades, 4 or 5 decades, maybe 6 decades now, I guess. Now, what happened before that? A lot of conservatives want to be a little simplistic about this and say, well, before affirmative action, you just had a pure meritocracy. But that's not quite true, and we don't just have quite a pure meritocracy now, because there are other factors at play. There is legacy admissions. Legacy admissions don't favor the highest test scores, they favor people with a tie to the university. The pure meritocrats say we need to get rid of legacy admissions, but that's not a conservative point of view. You want some continuity. You want people to say, no, my family has had a connection to this institution, not just a college, but maybe a church, maybe a neighborhood, maybe a community organization, maybe a Senate seat, for goodness sakes. Tradition and continuity and the kind of experience that you don't just learn out of a textbook or learn on your own for the first time, but that is imbued into you and your family from birth, that's a pretty conservative thing. We like tradition. We like things outside of pure rationalistic book learning. Okay, there's that. There is the essay. And the college essay is supposed to figure out how well you think and how well you write. But that personal statement also says something about who you are, what your experiences are. Probably now, the people who do want to discriminate against white people in college admissions, they will just increase the importance of the personal essay, and they will use that as a way to say, okay, if the person indicates that he is not white, then we'll give him a little bit more of an advantage here. So that's not just a pure meritocracy. And before affirmative action, that's certainly true. There were inherited privileges. Obviously, there was a different kind of racial discrimination in the country, and all sorts of other little prejudices and all sorts of other little ineffable complications of life that made things a little bit different. At the founding of the country, my friend Sohrab Ahmari pointed this out on Twitter just yesterday. The Jeffersonian ideal, which you might say was a pure meritocracy, wasn't quite a pure meritocracy. It was this idea that you'd have a lot of yeoman farmers, that you'd have a lot of people who had their own property and their own land, but not grand estates, just, relatively more modest, Republican, lowercase r, types of land. So there are all these different views and different standards. And I think we just need to be aware of that all the time, because we can fall into the same trap of saying, no, the absolutely, totally, purely objective neutral standard is meritocracy. No, that's not really totally neutral either. That's an ideology too. The totally, absolutely free, unregulated free market, that's the neutral thing. No, that's a standard too, and some people might object to that standard. So we need to be a little bit more forthright about it. This is a big step in the right direction. We need to be even clearer moving forward. This is such big news. I had a lot of other things that I really wanted to get to today, but we've got a lot to do. We've got Fake Headline Friday. We've got the mailbag that we have to get to. I guess I'm going to give you a little tease, and maybe we'll try to get to it next week. Apparently, Joe Biden is open to psychedelics, which you might think Joe Biden's psychiatric condition right now couldn't possibly get any worse, so maybe taking a bunch of hallucinogenic drugs it might not improve things, but it might not make them worse. But apparently, according to Joe Biden's brother, Joe is open to psychedelics. So I'll leave you for the 4th of July weekend on that image of Joe just tripping out on shrooms and LSD. Maybe we'll get to it next week. First, as you're grilling out this weekend, though, you got to make sure that propane tank is full. That's why you got to check out Cinch. Right now, go to cinch.com, use promo code Knowles. 4th of July is upon us, with many wonderful family gatherings popping up. The last thing that you need when hosting your family is turning on the grill and being out of propane. That would be terrible. That's where our friends at Cinch come in. Cinch is a propane grill tank home delivery service. They deliver propane tanks right to your door on your schedule. They do not require any long-term commitment or subscription. Plus, delivery is completely contactless. You don't have to wait around at home. Track the order on the Cinch app from anywhere. The perfect summer night would not be complete without Cinch. Go online to cinch.com or download the Cinch app to order. New customers can get their first tank exchange for just $10 with promo code Knowles. Cinch.com or download the Cinch app. Use promo code Knowles to get your first tank exchange for just $10. This is a limited time offer. You must live within a Cinch service area to redeem it. Visit cinch.com right now /offer for details and make sure that you sign up. Summer is here, baby. It's the 4th of July. Do not even have to think about your propane tank. Cinch.com, promo code Knowles. We're doing something a little different today, folks. I usually just reserve this for the crème de la crème, the beurre de la beurre, but you may have noticed over the last week or so, there are more restrictions imposed on this show on one of the big tech platforms. And so I'm not going to change really what I'm saying. I'm not going to censor myself. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to do any of that. So we're just going to have to take out little parts of the show in order to not have the whole channel completely nuked and the episodes fully removed. And we're trying to be innocent as a serpent and, we're trying to be innocent as a dove and wise as a serpent. You don't want to be innocent as a serpent and wise as a dove. That's probably the worst of all worlds. But if you want the full show, then you got to go head on over and join the Daily Wire, Daily Wire Plus, become a member of the crème de la crème, the inner circle, the beurre de la beurre. You can also get the show right now in total on Twitter at @MKnowlesShow. So one of the things we do for the crème de la crème is a Fake Headline Friday where we have a stinger that I always forget. So it plays. I just talk to Mr. Davies just to irritate me. He still hits that stinger even though I'm always going to miss it. So Mr. Davies finds all these articles. Most of them are real headlines. One of them is a fake headline that he made up. I have to guess, with your help and with the help of the Membrum Segmentum audience, the creme de la creme, which one is the fake one. So let's see. First one up. Opinion. That gas-powered car you're thinking of buying over an electric vehicle won't be as nice in 10 years when you have to explain to your grandkids it's the reason they have no clean air to breathe. There are two types of people in this world, those who only think in the moment and those who think in the future. The problem with this headline, of course, is if your grandkids, God forbid, had no clean air to breathe, you wouldn't have to explain anything to them because we'd all be goners. I think that's a real headline. I think that one's true. Next one. Devil baby born with tail, horns, and hooves. Of all the hideous human malformations ever heard of in the state, the 5 weeks old offspring of Charles and Sarah. I was going to say this happened in India, because sometimes India, which doesn't necessarily have the greatest healthcare, you'll hear of some birth defects, and because of their religion, which has all sorts of eccentric kind of depictions of humanity and various spiritual beings, someone will be born with a deformity, and this will be taken as something with deep spiritual meaning, but it's not. Charles and Sarah are not exactly Hindu names. Tail, horns, and hooves. God, goodness gracious. I can't imagine that's real, but it's so insane. I'd say maybe it's real. I'd say maybe. I took in a Ukrainian refugee to live with my wife and me, then ran off with her after 10 days. We're in love. Yeah, I bet there's more to this story than just, oops, I took in this really smoking hot young Ukrainian lady refugee. And what do you know? We just fell in love. I want to see that guy's search history. A dad of 2 has run off with a Ukrainian refugee just 10 days after he and his partner welcomed her into their home. Yeah, I kind of believe that. I don't know. Wouldn't be surprised. All is fair in love and war, I guess? No, I don't really totally buy that. Palestinians say London's Big Ben was stolen from them. Such lies speak to the root cause of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's hard to believe that one, but it's kind of, I don't know, man, this is kind of a hard week. Say maybe cows lose their jobs as milk prices drop. As his 100 dairy cows lumbered over Monday afternoon milking, farmer Eric Foster pondered his sudden misfortune. Okay, I said that one's real. I say that one's real. I'm going to say devil born with tail, horns, and hooves. I know this is weird. I'm going to say this one's real. It's just because it's just so outlandish. Opinion, the gas-powered car. I'm going to say that one is real. 2 types of people in this world: those who only think in the moment, those who think about the future. Okay, this is my holdup on this one. There is an error. Sometimes there are errors of grammar and punctuation and spelling, and so in the capital T after the colon, that raises my eyebrows. Palestinians say so. Producer Jacob is on just a jihad against the Palestinian people, and so I don't think he would include one that was ridiculous about the Palestinians if it weren't true. But this one is pretty outlandish, so I'm going to say, still leaning like kind of no. I took in a Ukrainian refugee. This one I do sort of buy. Okay, so it's between these 3 here. I'm going to say, when I follow my gut on the grammar and punctuation and spelling errors, I'm often correct. So I'm going to say it's the opinion one that's fake. But I really don't know, and all right, let's just see. We'll see what happens. Who knows? We're heading into a nice 4th of July weekend. Oh, man. There it is, baby. And it's a meme of Ben Shapiro on Memory TV, which is really quite funny. Wow, big one by the skin of my teeth on that one. It was one capitalization after a colon that got it. So it means that Palestinians believe that Big Ben was stolen from them? What? What does that mean? I don't know what that mean. What mean, man? Ukrainian refugee, that poor wife. Kind of want to see if there's a picture of the Ukrainian lady that caused this poor schlub to leave his wife. Devil baby born with tail and hooves. Well, okay, we don't have time for me to read all of these now. Maybe I'll read them after the show. Folks, got great news for you. We are introducing the Precision 5 Razor 1 handle plus 1 blade cartridge kit for $14.99. That is Jeremy's lowest cost for a razor ever, and it's only for a limited time. It's crafted with a luxurious tungsten handle, 5 welded steel blades, and a flip-back trimmer for a close, smooth shave around hairlines and hard-to-reach places. But remember, the Precision 5 is no ordinary razor. It's a sword in the battle for beliefs, a banner to wave into a new economy, a precision instrument to force woke companies to earn back your dollar and stop denigrating your beliefs. It's also still a razor, and it will give you a great shave. The Precision 5 is starting at $14.99. With a price so low, it has never been easier to stop giving your money to woke corporations that hate you. Join over 125,000 men who have ditched their woke razors and switched to Jeremy's. There's never been a better time or price. Go to jeremysrazors.com today. My favorite comment yesterday is from Thank You Pete. Or is that Ty Pete? Whatever his name, he says, Sexy Mike, I went to the barber and got my new haircut like yours. My wife says I am crazy, but I think I look fabulous. So I'm honored to hear that. Thank you. I think we do look fabulous, Pete. I one time was walking in Georgetown, and a guy comes up to me and says to me, hey, you don't know me, but I'm introducing myself, and I just want you to know I went to the barber last week and showed him a picture of your hair and say that I want to get this haircut. I'm really honored, and I say this with humility because this haircut, I've had this since I was 6, and it's only a slight alteration on the haircut that I had previously when I was 5. I've never changed my haircut since then, and it's just the haircut that guys had in the 40s. That's all it is. There's nothing really totally different about it, and you can have it too. You can have that too. And now we've finally arrived. at my favorite time of the week when I get to hear from you in the Mailbag, sponsored by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com, select a plan, and enter code Knowles, Knowles, to get 50% off your first month. Take it away.
Hello, Smokey Mike. This is Julia, your number one fangirl, and I'm sure that you've missed hearing my dulcet tones in the voice mailbag. So I was having a conversation with my brother the other day. His name is also Michael, and I had told him that while I'd never do these things, I had a morbid curiosity for tarot and Reiki and all that witchy stuff. Michael had commented that he had a similar morbid curiosity, but more for the psychedelics. He also noted that a lot of his female friends tend to be into the fortune-telling witchy side of that, and his male friends tended to also have a morbid curiosity for psychedelics. So my two questions to you are, one, do you think that these things are two sides of the same coin? And number two, do you think that maybe one has a more feminine side to it and the other has a more masculine side to it? Thanks. Love to hear your answer.
Yeah, I do think that. I think that psychedelics are very bad things to do because they open up spiritual portals that are really not great. And this is the reason that the libs today promote psychedelics, as they say, no, man, it just puts you at one, in touch with the universe, man. It really helped me overcome, some bad stuff, man. And I know, and I'm sure many people do think that it has helped them. And I do think that it puts you in touch with all sorts of different entities. But I don't think they're great entities. And if you want to hear more about this, you can listen to my interview with a guy who had taken a lot of psychedelics and what he felt that did to him. I have friends who've taken psychedelics, and I had a friend. He told me, he said, one thing I love about this particular psychedelic I took is it showed me, man, I was just worried about so much stuff I don't need to be worried about, I was really worried about like sin. I had all this guilt, I just got rid of that. I'm not worried about hell anymore. I'm not worried about sin. And his family broke down. He left his family shortly thereafter. It happens, It's not good. I don't want to seem like I'm saying that everything is demons. There's a demon under every rock, but there are demons who crouch about seeking the ruin of souls, prowling all over the world. And psychedelics seem even to be referenced in ancient literature and in the Book of Enoch, for instance. The Book of Enoch, which is referred to in the Bible, but it's not a canonical book of the Bible. It's a kind of mysterious old book. It talks about how the demons came down and taught man how to use roots, and use different kind of plants and things like that, which seems to be a reference to psychedelics. So that's true. And why do men like the drugs while women like the weird astrology stuff? Because men are a little more reckless, especially when it comes to their bodies, than women are. Men are more likely to take risks with their bodies, jump out of an airplane, drive really fast, and do drugs, drink too much. Women delve more into other kinds of temptations, gossip, astrology, complaining, all this. They're just, I'm not saying women sin more than men or men sin more than women. We just are tempted toward different vices. Next one.
Hey, Dirty Mike, Mr. Reality again. I wanted to ask you about lobotomies and...
Next one.
Hey, Michael, Alex here with a mailbag question for you. Love the show, regular watcher/listener. Anyway, I actually have two questions. One, so you had mentioned multiple times that RFK on your podcast is very anti-Second Amendment. Upon research, that isn't true. His latest comments about that is that he is for the Second Amendment. He is for all Second Amendment rights, and he's also for strong borders and whatnot. So is there something that you know that we don't? And then my second question is in regards to the transgender laws that multiple states are putting into place, banning transgender surgeries for minors, banning puberty blockers and whatnot. Multiple rogue judges have been blocking these laws, claiming they're quote-unquote unconstitutional. So as conservatives, how do we get past that? How do we get past the doom and gloom of you pass these laws, states laws, which are great, but then they're shut down by rogue far-left judges? So love the show, Michael. Thanks.
Okay, I'll take the questions in order. I'm glad that RFK has changed his tune on a number of political issues, but it's a change of tune. RFK Jr. has been a liberal Democrat for his entire life. He's a Kennedy. And I know that now we look at the Kennedys on the right and we say, oh, Jack Kennedy might have been a Republican had he been alive today, which I don't think is true. But we say, look, wow, he was so much more reasonable than the modern Democrats, which is true, but that's just because he was living in his time, and ideas have consequences, and political movements follow those ideas to their logical conclusions. And Bobby Kennedy has been a liberal Democrat for his life. I think he now sees that, one, the corruption of the political establishment is perhaps even worse than he previously suspected. The way that he has been attacked by that establishment for raising questions about vaccines now for like 15 years has probably cemented that view. And after COVID, a lot of conservatives became skeptical of vaccines in the medical establishment, so that attracted conservatives to Bobby Kennedy Jr., and Bobby Kennedy now realizes that his most ardent fans are not on the left, they're on the right, and so he, a politician from one of the most famous political families in the country, is probably either playing up to that audience a little bit more or sincerely moving more toward their side of the political spectrum. So great, I'm glad that he's changing on that, but you can read his past comments on these issues. This does represent a change. As for the judges striking down good laws and perfectly just laws, it's very, very frustrating. And so what we have to do is just keep pushing again and again and again. How many times was Roe versus Wade upheld? Well, it was most famously upheld in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, but how many times did lower court judges refer to Roe v. Wade as the settled law of the land? How many times did legal challenges to Roe v. Wade fail and reach a dead end? It just went on and on and on for 49 years. For half a century, the courts insisted, no, you don't get to pass your pro-life laws, no, you don't get to challenge Roe v. Wade. And then through amazing circumstance, through Antonin Scalia going to his eternal reward unexpectedly, followed by an improbable world historical figure, presidential candidate, winning the election when the geniuses told us 99% chance he'd lose, and then appointing 3 judges, and Mitch McConnell holding Scalia's seat open until you potentially got a Republican president. Then Trump appoints 3 judges, and then the 3 judges worked to overrule Roe v. Wade. We were prepared, and then opportunity came, and we were able to effect what we wanted, albeit 49 years later. And I think you're going to see that with the trans issue too. You just got to keep chipping away. You just got to play a game of determination and keep up that moral clarity and courage and keep up the fight. Next question.
Hi, Michael. I'm hoping you can provide me with some advice on women. I'm 26 years old and I've never had a girlfriend. I'm not really sure how to strike up a conversation, approach women, or even really a good place to meet them. I have a pretty good job, I go to church, and my life is fairly well put together, so I'm not a total loser. But especially over the past few years, I've been struggling with loneliness, and was hoping you could help me out here. Thank you.
Pal, really sorry to hear about that. It really pains me when I hear about people being lonely. It pains me more than almost any other issue I think of. It's not the most egregious thing. First of all, everybody's lonely sometimes. And it's not worse than, say, being murdered or raped or, there are many things that are worse objectively than being lonely. But being lonely just really feels awful. And it pains me when I think of friends and family of mine who have felt lonely at different times. It really, really pains me. And what's bizarre about the time we're living in is that loneliness is something that many, many people seem to be doing more than in the past. You think that if everybody's doing something, you wouldn't be lonely. When you're lonely, you're the only one doing it. But people are just so isolated and so alienated that you might take some comfort in that loneliness is a group activity these days. How do you overcome that? Well, here's just a quick little tip. This is not a real long-term answer to when you're feeling really, really lonely. Crack open a book. Crack open a good book. Reading a good book is the only activity that you can do alone that will make you feel less lonely. But that's just a Tylenol. That's just a little Band-Aid. How do you fix the loneliness problem generally? And specifically for you don't have a girlfriend or a wife. Well, I would reach out to your family. Say, hey, can you introduce me to somebody? Because you're not really alone. You got some family, presumably, and let's say your family's all dead, God forbid. Well, you have a job, right? You have coworkers. Do you ever talk to your coworkers? Maybe you don't. Some people don't talk to you, but I bet you talk to them a little bit, where you say good morning or something like that. Maybe you strike up a conversation with a coworker. Maybe it's a dude. I'm not suggesting that you lighten up those loafers. I'm suggesting, though, that any real human connection can lead to being able to meet a woman. And you say, hey, I'm looking for a girlfriend. Basically, you know any cute girls around here? Do you know any? Hey, your wife, does she have a cousin? Does she have this, that, or the other thing? It's kind of like the more you work, the more you work. People think that, the way to have a great career is to just wait for the perfect career to come along. But anyone who's ever had a great career knows that the way that you get it is you just work all the time. Well, it's the same thing for social life. The way that you make really great friends is you just hang out with people, and you just strike up conversations in the elevator, You just talk to your coworkers, you smile a little bit, and you ask how people are doing. You're genuinely interested in people, and that will do it. I've been really blessed. I've had a great love life and romantic life and marriage life, and I've had great friendships too, but it's exceedingly rare these days. And friendship, I think, is rarer even than romance. Because we denigrate that now and we say that love is love. We say that all love just has to be romantic or erotic love rather than filial love, rather than the love of God, or all of these things. So you're not alone in dealing with this problem, but my solution for you would be to throw spaghetti at the wall. Surely you have some family member somewhere, or surely you've got some coworker somewhere, or surely you sit next to someone in the church and maybe you don't make conversation all the time. Well, just make conversation. Say, well, wasn't that a lovely hymn? And make, oh, what a beautiful day it is. Any ordinary icebreaker, small talk kind of language. You might think it sounds silly because no one likes small talk, but the point of small talk is not to talk about the weather. No one cares about the weather. The point of small talk is to make a human connection, and you can do it. You say you're around people, well, talk to them. All right, we've got the written mailbag coming up. Oh, no, we don't, because oh my goodness, this is so devastating. We have no member block today. Oh, and okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go over then, because I have one mailbag that I want to get to. This is from David. It says, I've never seen anyone make ukulele seem as fun as you do. Thank you very much. Kind of an old dog, but I'm interested now. How would you recommend going about learning to play the ukulele? What kind would you suggest to start out? Should I just grab a $40 instrument off of Amazon and start strumming? Thanks for all that you do. Yes, the ukulele is my favorite instrument, probably. It's the most fun instrument. 4 strings, it's very, very easy. The standard tuning is G, starting at, not at the top. It's kind of confusing because when we say the top of an instrument, we're talking about the high notes, but the high notes are physically on the bottom of the instrument. But anyway, starting out as you would strum it down, it's G, higher G, then lower down to a C, then E, then A. There we go. I've just taught you how to tune your ukulele. You pull it up on YouTube. How to play You Are My Sunshine. How to play... You pull up some of my videos. I've done some arrangements of little uke tunes. You can just pull them up on Instagram, just mimic what I'm doing. Pull up little chords, learn your chords. It's easier even than guitar, and guitar is a relatively easy instrument to learn. I wouldn't spend $40. I'd spend like $60. You can get Cordova instruments are pretty good for beginner ukes. The soprano one is the classic uke sound. It's a little bit small. The concert ukulele is a little bit bigger, probably a little easier to learn how to fret, though doesn't quite have that fun, like, hot, bright, jangly ukulele sound. I had an Oscar Schmidt, I still have it, an Oscar Schmidt by Washburn ukulele, which is relatively quite inexpensive. I paid $60 for it 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago now. Goodness great, like 21 years ago, probably I got it. Anyway, you can get these things. You can get really expensive ukes too, but get a cheap one, $100 uke, $60 uke, and pull up some YouTube videos and start playing it. You will not regret it. No one's too old and no one's too musically talentless to learn the ukulele. That's our show. I'm Michael Knowles. This is the Michael Knowles Show. See you next time.